ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकय चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतपादकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं सागरजातं सगगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सगगण ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितंश्च। नमो ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिन्निति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नामिने गौरतस्वे नमः। पंचतत्वात्मकं कृष्णं भक्तरूपस्वरूपकं भक्तावतारं भक्ताख्यं नमामि भक्तशक्तिकं। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So we'll get started. So today's session, we are going to see the structure of Bhagavad Gita and then the overview of all the 18 chapters as well. So we'll see how much we can cover. So last week we saw the introduction from Bhagavad Gita as it is written by Srila Prabhupada, which again gives the overview of the entire Bhagavad Gita with themes and everything. So now we will go into the structure of Bhagavad Gita. As we always say that this is all based on the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So in this session, we'll be covering various topics. So first is why to study Bhagavad Gita systematically. Second is preparing the mood for Gita study. And then next is the structure of Bhagavad Gita, the Gita as a jewel box. And then within that, there are three divisions, the Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. And then the Yoga ladder, we're going to see. And then the chapter summaries, the flow, connection between each chapter, the flow of the chapters. Part 1, again, Karma Yoga, chapter 1 to 16, the flow. And then part 2 is Bhakti Yoga, chapter 7 to 12. And then part 3 is Jnana Yoga, chapter 13 to 18, the flow. So now, why to study Bhagavad Gita systematically? So we all know during the rainy season in the village where mud paths are there, because during rainy season, not many people might walk in those mud paths. So if not many people are walking, what happens is over the period of time, it gets covered with grass. Similarly, when authentic, the spiritual scriptures are not studied for long, pure knowledge becomes covered by speculative and unwanted theories that misdirect the human society. When the scriptures are not studied systematically over the period of time, what happens is people start speculating and then they will start injecting their own theories. And because of the speculative nature of human beings, and then people's tendency to speculate and concoct various theories, that actually will redirect the human society, right? But the scriptures present pristine wisdom right, which directly descends from the Supreme Lord himself. We saw that earlier. Originally, the Vedas, right, are also called as Aparaushya. Aparaushya means not of human origin. In the beginning of creation, the Supreme Lord himself, right, imparted this Vedic knowledge in the heart of Brahma. Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavya Mukhyati Yat. It is mentioned in the first sloka of Srimad Bhagavatam. Originally, this Vedic knowledge have been imparted in the heart of Brahma directly by the Supreme Lord. Right? He is the original receiver of the Vedas. Then later Brahma taught to his, children and students, and then over the period of time, it was coming in a disciplic succession. But over the period of time, it gets lost, right? So Krishna tells in Bhagavad Gita, Yada yada hi dharmasi glanir bharati bhavata abhyuttana madharmasi tadatmanam shrajam yagam. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya saduskritam dharma samsapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Krishna is telling, when that evam parampara praptam imam rajarshya vidiga sakalena magata yoga nashta parantapa, this knowledge of Gita philosophy, whatever Krishna is speaking, this yoga philosophy, what Krishna speaks in Bhagavad Gita, it was coming in a parampara system, right? In the beginning of creation, it was spoken by Krishna to Brahma. Brahma later spoke to Manu. Manu spoke to his son Ikshvaku. Ikshvaku, right, is the founder of the Surya dynasty. He spoke to his children. Like that, it was coming in a disciplic succession. Over the period of time, it got lost. And Krishna says, I am here again to speak the same knowledge of Gita, what I spoke to sun god Vivaswan many millions of years ago. I am again speaking here this knowledge to you, Arjuna, because you are my friend and devotee, right? The scriptures gives the pristine wisdom, right? What wisdom it gives? It gives the path to transcend these three types of misery. Adhyatmika klesha, Adi Bhaudika klesha, and Adi Daivika klesha. Misery is caused by one's own body and mind. Misery is caused by misery is caused by other living entities, and misery is caused by natural calamities. All this three klesha, right? The Vedic knowledge, when we follow it properly, it clearly helps us to overcome, transcend these three types of misery and go back to the spiritual world, go back home, back to Godhead. When thick grass covers a pathway, it is difficult to walk on that path, or sometimes the path is not even recognized, right? If you don't walk, over the period of time, the path gets covered by the grass and you will not even know that there is a path. Similarly, if one generation chooses not to study, understand, and apply and spread the knowledge of the scriptures, the later generation should have no precedence and the inspirations to study or follow them. Hence, right, it becomes the responsibility of the sincere spiritual seeker to read and assimilate the scriptural principles and guide the future generations. The reason why we have to study systematically, one is to help ourselves so that we get crystal clear knowledge from the scriptures, so that we can conduct our life, and we can, by end of this life, we can go back home, back to Godhead. And not only that, right? When we study and assimilate and apply in our life, when we can do that, we can also help the future generation, guide them and train them in this proper knowledge so that the tradition can continue. So this course, as we say, is an humble attempt to facilitate and simplify the study of our most vital scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, right? We saw that the essence of all Vedic knowledge is in Upanishads, and the essence of all the Upanishad is in this one Upanishad, that is Gita Upanishad, right? So by studying this Bhagavad Gita systematically, right, by understanding its structure, flow, and gist in a very concise form, we can understand and we can assimilate, and then we can apply in our life, and then also we can train others, the future generation. So that is responsibility, our responsibility. So Bhagavad Gita is the greatly enlightening philosophical song sung by Lord Shri Krishna, right, the Supreme Lord, to instruct bewildered Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. The Gita is known for its philosophical depth and practical relevance in day-to-day life, right? We know that Gita, right, is the conclusion of all philosophical knowledge is there in Gita, right? Vedas provides knowledge. Veda means literally knowledge. Vedas contains all kind of knowledge. The philosophical conclusion of all the Vedic knowledge is in Upanishads. That's why they are called Vedanta. Veda means knowledge, Anta means end or conclusion. Vedanta means conclusion of all knowledge. So Upanishads are considered to be the Vedanta because they give the philosophical conclusion of all the Vedic teaching. And the conclusion of all the essence of all the Upanishads is there in Bhagavad Gita, right? So that's why it's very deep philosophically. And it's also practical, right? And it's relevant in our day-to-day life, right? Arjuna had this dilemma, to do or not to do. He was not able to make a decision to fight or not fight. So we all have in our life, right, this dilemma, right? To do or not to do, right? Any moment, we all have to always go through this, decision-making process. So Gita helps us to on what basis we should make decision. Ultimately, there should be some principles based on which we should make decision. It should not be simply whimsically for ahara nidra bhayamaitanamcha. It is not just simply for eating, mating, sleeping and defending. We have to transcend about these needs of the body, mind and intellect. We have to fulfill the need of the soul, that's need of our self. The need of the self is to love and to be loved. The need of the self is to serve unconditionally towards the supreme object of love. Right? This Gita, as we know that, gives these 5 truths. That what are they? The knowledge of God, the knowledge of the Jiva, Prakriti, Kala, and Karma. See, Bhagavad Gita systematically presents the knowledge of the eternal soul, right? In the second chapter, we will see the second chapter verses 2.11 to 2.30. Krishna gives systematically the science of the soul, Atma Jnana. We can, by studying these verses, we can very clearly understand how we are not this body. We are all eternal spirit souls. Krishna gives in a very logical, systematic way. So it gives knowledge of the temporary body. If we are all the eternal soul, what this body is all about, right? This body is made up of earth, water, fire, air, and ether, right? And then on top of it, we have the subtle body, which is made up of mind, intelligence, and false ego. Bhumi rapo analo vayuhu, kammono buddhi revacha, ahankara itiyame binna prakriti ashtada. Krishna tells in the 7th chapter. And then Krishna gives the art of working. What is that art of working? When we do work, for every work, there will be results, right? Based on what the work we do, that work's results will be binding to us. It could be either papa or punya, right? Every work, when based on, if the scriptures, something is recommended in scriptures, it's allowed, it's called karma or punya, it will have a positive reaction. When the scriptures prohibit some activity, when we do that work, there will be a negative reaction. It's called papa. So this results of the work, what we do, there will be a reaction, and those reactions will be binding. That means we have to take again birth to reap the reactions of that work we do. So Gita teaches the art of working without getting reactions. Akarma, neither karma nor vikarma. It is akarma. When we do that activity, there won't be any reactions for future. Not only that, it will completely burn up all our past reactions as well. And then Gita also teaches the 3 modes that influence all beings. As we saw that how everything in this world, right, is made of these 3 modes. Sattva guna, Rajoguna, Tamoguna. How all colors in this world is made up of the 3 primary colors, red, green and blue. Similarly, everything in this material world is made of these 3 modes, right? Sattva guna, Rajoguna and Tamoguna. When you mix these 3 modes, then different kinds of things, different types of body, different types of time, different types of activities, different type of knowledge, everything Anything and everything in this world can be classified into three modes. And then the importance of regulated habits, how to speak, how to eat, how to recreate, how to donate, the art of mind control, sense control, meditation, the art of rendering service to the Supreme, various powers of God, attachment, detachment, and so on. All these topics Gita gives in a very, very profound way this knowledge. Thus, Bhagavad Gita is a standard reference manual for all human beings who seek to know the truth, refine their intellect, and uplift their consciousness. Right? Bhagavad Gita is the ultimate reference manual for human society. Right? If we wanted to know the supreme absolute truth, if we want to refine our intellect, if we want to uplift our consciousness currently it is conditioned by the three modes, right? The mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Whichever mode is dominating at the time, our consciousness will be accordingly influenced. Even though the soul is pure in nature, when it's covered by the false ego and the mind and intelligence and this body, our consciousness gets contaminated or conditioned. Depending on the mode in which we are acting, our consciousness will be accordingly. Sometimes our consciousness can be in mode of goodness, sometimes it can be passion, it can be sometimes based on ignorance, right? If you want to uplift our consciousness from these three conditioning modes and come to the original consciousness, the pure consciousness of the soul, that is to love and to be loved, that is to simply serve unconditionally. By serving unconditionally, we discharge the Sanatana Dharma, the duty of the soul. That is our constitutional position. That gives ultimately the joy, Ananda, right? The expanse and the depth of Bhagavad Gita is better appreciated from the commentaries of great acharyas or spiritual teachers, right? On our own, when we read Gita, we may or may not understand properly. But when we read, when we study Bhagavad Gita, based on the commentaries given by the great acharyas in the past or the spiritual teachers, then we can appreciate Gita, not just the information given in, right? The depth of information, and when applied the depth of information, a practical transformation we can experience, right? As we say, this course is an humble attempt to present the flow of Bhagavad Gita concisely based on the explanation of Srila Prabhupada and especially Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan, two of the acharyas from 4 centuries ago, 3 or 4 centuries ago, right? Srila Prabhupada's presentation in English is based on the commentaries written by Baladev Vidyabhushan as well as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in Sanskrit as well. So now next is preparing the mood for Gita study, right? As mentioned earlier, scriptural study is of vital importance to a spiritual seeker, and the study of Bhagavad Gita is considered foundational for one's spiritual understanding. At the onset, right, we wish to briefly present, right? Yep, beautiful episode from the divine pastimes of Lord Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, right? On the study of Bhagavad Gita, right? So if in Chaitanya Charitamrita, written by Krishnadas Kaviraja Goswami, compiled 5 centuries ago, in that he gives an incident when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was traveling in South India, right? So in South India, there is a place called Srirangam, right? It's a very famous, temple of Lord Krishna. Vishnu is there. Very, very popular temple in Trichy, near Trichy. It's called Srirangam. It's on the bank of river Kaveri. In that place, Kaveri divides into two, and there is an island formed. In that island, between the branches of Kaveri and the main Kaveri, right? This island is situated. The place is called Srirangam, right? At Sriranga Kshetra, a Brahmana Vaishnava used to recite Bhagavad Gita, but he could not pronounce the words correctly. So people would criticize and laugh at him. As he read the Gita, his hair stood on end, tears welled up in his eyes, and his body trembled and perspired. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is none other than Lord Krishna, the speaker of Bhagavad Gita, saw the Brahmana and became very happy. He asked the Brahmana which portion of the Gita was giving him so much joy. The Brahmana replied, I am an illiterate. I am reading the Gita as per the order of my Guru. When I read the Gita, I only see Krishna sitting as Arjuna's charioteer. Taking reins in his hand, he appears very beautiful and blackish. Seeing Krishna instructing Arjuna, I am filled with ecstatic happiness. Right? So this person, even though who is illiterate, he didn't know how to read and write. He, on the order of his guru, he was reciting Bhagavad Gita every day in front of the deities. Right? When Mahaprabhu saw him, right, when he asked this question, which portion of the Gita, when he was reciting that Gita, out of ecstasy, he used to, tears used to come from his eyes. So when Mahaprabhu saw this, he got overjoyed by looking at this Brahmana. He asked him, what part of the Gita gives that joy? Then he said, I don't know anything. All I remember when I read Gita is I just simply remember Krishna being the charioteer for Arjuna, and then he is instructing this knowledge, his beautiful form, right? Krishna is holding the reins of the chariot in his hand, and he appears very beautiful and blackish. That is the only thing which comes to my mind when I read Gita, right? When Mahaprabhu hears this, right, he is actually overjoyed. And then he tells at the time that to the Brahmana, you understood the spirit of Bhagavad Gita. Your understanding of Gita is much superior to any other learned scholar, right? Like that. Lord Chaitanya told him, you are an authority in the reading of the Bhagavad Gita. Whatever you know constitutes the real purport of the Gita. The Lord embraced him and revealed to him that he was Lord Krishna himself, right? Because he was simple, he was surrendered, he was humble to the instruction of the spiritual master. Simply he was reciting in front of the Lord every day. The Lord became very kind to him. He saw his simplicity of the heart without any pretense, simply following the instruction of Guru, he was reading. And then his mood was correct, right? When he saw that, when he was reading Gita, he always remembered Krishna being the Supreme Lord, how he was in control of the chariot, like that, right? So because he was so simple and humble, Lord Krishna came in the form of Lord Chaitanya and revealed himself to him and directly gave the darshan of him. The Lord is pleased by devotion and faithful submissiveness to the instruction of Guru, but not by erudite scholarship or sharp intelligence. The real purport of the Gita or any other Vaishnava scripture is revealed to one who has faith in the Supreme Lord and Guru. It does not depend on external things like pronunciation or scholarship, right? If somebody is scholarly, it's good. It's not that it's not good. But scholarly thing is not the only requirement to understand the purport or the real import of the Vedic knowledge. The mood in which one studies, that's more important than the method in which one studies. Right? The mood is more important than the method. Yes, method is important, but that is not the primary thing. That is a secondary thing. The mood is more important. The scholarship could be a byproduct of one's scriptural study, but the intended end product is the development of good character and ultimately love for the Supreme Lord Krishna. Reaching such a pristine goal begins with the baby steps of practicing various elements of sadhana prescribed by our acharyas, of which scriptural study, swadhyaya, in the association of devotees is the one of the important elements, right? There are 5 aspects, right? Sadachar, sadhana, swadhyaya, and sankirtana. There are the 5 S's, right? Out of the 5 S's, swadhyaya is scriptural study. It is also very important. Bhagavad Gita, the jewel box. Now we are looking into the structure of Bhagavad Gita, how Bhagavad Gita is structured, right? We all know that Bhagavad Gita contains the 18 chapters, right? Bhagavad Gita is the crown jewel of all knowledge, right? It is like a beautiful golden box containing the most valuable secret treasure. The 18 chapters of Gita are divided into 3 sections with 6 chapters each, right? Every sloka in Bhagavad Gita We saw that Bhagavad Gita contains the 700 slokas, right? Every one of them is like a valuable jewel. And the entire Gita is like a jewel box, right? And then this jewel box is divided into 3 sections. The first section concerning Karma Yoga is the lower covering of the box. And then the last section about Jnana Yoga is the jewel-studded lid of the box. The middle section on Bhakti Yoga is the most excellent shining jewel inside the box, more valuable than anything in the 3 worlds, which brings Lord Krishna under control, right? The middle chapters, Krishna explains the Bhakti Yoga, Ananya Bhakti, pure, unalloyed devotion. Krishna explains how only by Bhakti one can understand Krishna, who he is. Only by Bhakti he comes, Krishna, even though he is the supreme controller of everything, he is Parameshwara, right? In the Brahma Samhita, Lord Brahma says, Ishvara Parama Krishna, Sachidananda Vigraha, Anadi Radhir Govinda, Sarva Karana Karanam, right? He is the cause of all causes. He is Anadir. He doesn't have any other source. He is the original person, Adir, Sarva Karana Karanam, right? Krishna is the source of everything. He is Parameshwara, right? That supreme Parameshwara, who is the controller of everything, who is controller of all the Devatas and all the planet, right? He comes under control of his devotees. When the devotees render pure devotional service to such a pure devotee, the Lord comes under control. So that real secret Krishna reveals in the middle 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura gives this beautiful analogy comparing Bhagavad Gita, right, to a valuable jewel box. The first 6 chapters are like the lower portion of the box. The last 6 chapters are like the jewel-studded lid of the box. And then middle section, Bhakti Yoga, is the most excellent shining jewel inside the box. This is the analogy given by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Yoga means to link one's consciousness with the supreme absolute truth. Srila Prabhupada writes in Bhagavad Gita commentary to the verse 6th chapter 46th verse, in the purport he writes, when the linking process is predominantly in fruitive activities, it is called Karma Yoga. When it is predominantly empirical, it is called Jnana Yoga. And when it is predominantly in a devotional relationship with the Supreme Lord, it is called Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga or Krishna consciousness is the ultimate perfection of all yogas. The essential message of the Bhagavad Gita is bhakti or devotional service unto the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. Right? The first 6 chapters presented how to attain bhakti by one's work or karma yoga. The last 6 chapters describe how to attain bhakti by knowledge or jnana yoga. The middle 6 chapters directly present the path of bhakti. This fascinating structure of the Gita ultimately concludes that seeking shelter of Lord Krishna by Bhakti Yoga is the essence of human life. Right? So in this, the Karma Yoga chapters 1 to 6, we are going to see the structure, how it is within that Karma Yoga, what chapters are there, how it is structured. Karma Yoga means to perform one's prescribed duties and offering them to the Supreme Lord, offering the results of our duty to the Supreme Lord. Such work done with detachment from results is specifically called Nishkama Karma Yoga. Nishkama means without attachment to the fruits of the work, one discharges this prescribed duty and offers that fruits of the work in the service of the Supreme. It is called Nishkama Karma Yoga, which consists of jnana or knowledge developed by such work. When somebody does the discharge the prescribed duty in this unattached manner, ultimately that leads to knowledge. When we do work without being attached to the fruits of the work, that gives jnana, right? Seeing the armies on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Arjuna becomes overwhelmed with compassion for his relatives and gives various reasons why he cannot fight. So this is the summary of the first chapter. In the first chapter, right, In the beginning, starts with Sanjaya speaking, and then the entire battlefield is described, who and all had come, who is speaking what, and then finally, in the middle of first chapter, Arjuna requests Krishna to drive the chariot to the middle of the battlefield because he wanted to see who and all come against to fight him. And then at that time, when he sees that his relatives, especially his grandfather and Guru, that he has to fight against them, he becomes overwhelmed with compassion, right? And gives various reasons why he cannot fight. The first reason he gives is compassion. The second reason he gives is fear of sinful reaction. The third reason he gives is loss of enjoyment. When the kingdom will be tainted with blood, he will not be able to enjoy that kingdom. And then fourth reason he gives is the destruction of family tradition. When all the elders are killed, there won't be anybody to direct, especially women and children in the society. When they are not protected properly, it will produce unwanted progeny. When women are exploited, it will produce unwanted progeny. When unwanted children are produced, they will not offer food and water to their ancestors, and because of that, all social structure will collapse. Right? These are the four reasons Arjuna gives in the first chapter of Gita. When you go into the first chapter, we will see the detail. Now I am just giving the overview. In the second chapter, responding to Arjuna's concerns, Krishna first gives him the knowledge of the soul, Atma Jnana or Sankhya, analytical study of matter and spirit. Sankhya means analytical study. What is analytical study? Analytical study of matter and spirit, the difference between matter and spirit. And says that doing one's prescribed work gives happiness either in victory or defeat. Sakama karma. Then Krishna talks about Sakama karma. And Krishna then recommends doing such work with detachment, by which one attains steady knowledge, sthita prajnata. This process is called Nishkama Karma Yoga. And basically this is the summary of Gita, right? Doing one's prescribed duty with a detachment and ultimately offering the fruits. Hello, can you hear me?
Can hear. Now we can hear. Now we can hear. Thank you.
Something happened. So, okay, so we'll continue. So in the beginning of third chapter, right, when Krishna talks about renunciation action, Arjuna gets confused. Which is better? He doesn't know. Then Krishna explains that, right, action based on Nishkama Karma Yoga is preferable to premature renunciation based on Jnana Yoga. Even if Arjuna is qualified for renunciation, he should still do Nishkama Karma Yoga to set the right example for the society. Krishna also warns about lust, the formidable enemy on the path of yoga. So this is basically the summary of the third chapter. Then Krishna teaches transcendental knowledge about himself, his divine descents, reciprocation with his devotees, creation, and so on, understanding which many liberated souls did their work with detachment. A karma yogi or detached worker, although working, does not incur reactions. All kinds of sacrificial work culminate in knowledge, jnana, by which one can renounce action, sannyasa. So this basically is the summary of the fourth chapter. In the fifth chapter, Arjuna again gets confused about Krishna's simultaneous emphasis on karma yoga and renunciation, sannyasa. Krishna again clarifies that they both are not contradictory and are the same, but karma yoga is easier. A Nishkama karma yogi can be a true sannyasi and be free from all bondage and attain liberation. Then Krishna briefly mentions about Ashtanga Yoga and the supremacy of Bhakti Yoga. Right? In the fifth chapter, Krishna talks about Karma Sannyasa Yoga. In that, he talks how when Nishkama Karma Yogi performs his duty without attachment to the fruits of the work and offers the fruits of the work to the Supreme, even though he may not be in the renounced order of life, he may not be a sannyasi, he might be a grahastha. Even though he might be a grahastha, if he does his duty without attachment to the fruits of the work, he is as good as a sannyasi, right? By performing the duty even from the family life or householder life, one can attain liberation. That's what in the Karma Sannyasa Yoga Krishna talks about. Next, in the sixth chapter named Ashtanga Yoga, then Krishna speaks of Dhyana Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga that has two stages, Yoga Ruruksha, the beginning, to Yoga Ruddha, advanced stage. The various practices of Ashtanga Yoga are aimed at attaining the perfection of realizing the super soul. In yoga, it is necessary to control the mind by practice and detachment. Karma Yoga is more practical and easier method for Arjuna. However, Bhakti Yogi is the topmost yogi. So this is the summary of the sixth chapter. So this is the structure of the first 6 chapters of Gita. First chapter is Arjuna Vishada Yoga, or observing the battlefield, observing the army at the battlefield of Kurukshetra. The second chapter is called Sankhya Yoga, or the overview or the summary of Bhagavad Gita. The third chapter is called Karma Yoga. The fourth chapter is called Jnana Yoga, and the fifth chapter is called Karma Sannyasa Yoga, and sixth chapter is called Ashtanga Yoga. So this gives the flow of the overview of this first 6 chapters. Although Krishna describes Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Ashtanga Yoga in the first 6 chapters of the Gita, the main emphasis of this section is Karma Yoga. Nishkama Karma Yoga contains within it Jnana and culminates in Ashtanga Yoga. So now in the middle 6 chapters, Bhakti Yoga. The middle 6 chapters that categorically describe Bhakti Yoga are direct surrender unto Shri Krishna, are the essence of the Gita. Bhakti essentially means to be in Krishna consciousness. Mat Chitta, right? Krishna tells Mat Chitta, Mat Kada Prana, Bona is the Bodhayanta Parasparam, Kadayantascha Mam Nityam, Tushyanticha Ramanticha. So my devotees who are always thinking of me, their thoughts dwelling in me, right? They enlighten each other by discussing about my transcendental pastimes. Right? That's what Krishna describes in the 10th chapter, in the Chaturshloki of Gita, 10.9. He says that. So he says that several times in Bhagavad Gita. Submissive hearing is the primary aspect of bhakti that reveals knowledge about Krishna's energies and all pervasiveness. Krishna's inferior material energy constitutes the element such as earth, water, air, and so on. Krishna's superior spiritual energy consists of the living entities, jivas. The jivas are prone to be conditioned by the 3 material modes, and thus they suffer. Surrendering to Krishna in Bhakti Yoga delivers them. However, impious people do not perform Krishna Bhakti. Some worship the demigods, some even consider Krishna to be impersonal, and some perform Bhakti with various intentions to come out of distress, being inquisitive, desiring wealth and knowledge. But a pure devotee who does unalloyed Bhakti, Kevala Bhakti or Ananya Bhakti, just to please Lord Shri Krishna, is the topmost Bhakti yogi. A sinless person can do determined Bhakti. This is the summary of the 7th chapter. Now the 8th chapter, whatever one remembers at the Ananya Bhakti can remember Krishna at the time of death. Krishna tells in the 8th chapter 5th verse, right? Anta kalacha mamyeva smaran mukta kalevaram yaprayati samat bhavam yati nati atra samshayga. At the end of life, anta kalacha mamyeva, if one remembers me alone, mam means me, eva means alone, anta kalacha mamyeva, if they remember me alone, smaran mukta kalevaram, they remember me, right, at the time of death, they attain me. Of this, there is no doubt. Yati natyatra samshayaga. Of this, there is no doubt. In the next verse, Krishna tells, Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tajiti yanti kalevaram tam tam tayati yanti kayamteya sadatat bhava bhavitaha. He is telling that whatever at the time of death one thinks, that's what his next life is going to be. That's what his destiny is going to be. If you think of Krishna at the time of death, we will go to Krishna Loka. If you think of our ancestor at the time of death, we will go to Pitri Loka. We think of, whatever we think of, that's what our destiny is going to be. What we desire and what we deserve, that will determine our destination. Right? Krishna tells, right, one who always remembers Krishna while doing his duties and performs Ananya Bhakti can remember Krishna at the time of death. He reaches eternal spiritual abode of Krishna and never takes birth again in this miserable material world. Jnanis and yogis attain liberation by the path of light, and the karmis who take the path of darkness come back to this world. But a bhakta attains Krishna's abode. So this is the summary of the 8th chapter. This is called, this 8th chapter is called Akshara Brahma Yoga. Now, the 9th chapter is called Raja Vidya Raja Guhya Yoga. The knowledge of pure bhakti is most confidential and is the king of all education. It gives direct experience of the absolute truth and causes ultimate joy. Right? Second verse of the 9th chapter, 9.2, Krishna says, Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam Pavitram Idamuttamam Praktaksha Bhagamam Dharmyam Susukam Kartum Avyayam. This knowledge gives the direct experience of the absolute truth. Praktaksha Bhagamam Dharmyam Susukam Kartum Avyayam. Susukam means it's joyfully performed. Kartum Avyayam, it is eternally performed. Under Krishna's supreme direction, Krishna again further continues in the 9th chapter, his material energy creates, maintains and destroys this material world. But that work does not bind Krishna. Different people approach Krishna in different ways. Fools consider him as an ordinary human. Devotees worship him constantly with devotion. And the 3 kinds of jnanis worship him by considering themselves God, worshipping the universal form, and worshipping demigods for quick material results. But the process of direct bhakti to Krishna is the most simple and easy. Krishna accepts even a leaf, flower, fruit, or water offered with devotion. Patram pushpam palam toyam. Right? Krishna says, one, if he offers with love and devotion, a fruit, a leaf, a flower, or water, he accepts. Krishna is equal to all. He is impartial, but specifically inclined to a devotee and excuses him for accidental mistakes. People of even sinful birth can attain Krishna Bhakti, so perform direct Bhakti to Krishna. That is the summary of the 9th chapter. In the 10th chapter, Krishna The object of bhakti is the source of everything, right? In the material and spiritual worlds. Aham sarvasya prabhu matta sarvam pravartate. Iti matva bhajantema buddha bhava samamnitaha. No one, including the great sages and demigods, can know him. Krishna is especially merciful to his devotees who are absorbed in enlivening discussions about him. Matchita matkada prana bodhayanta parasparam. Kadayantascha mamnityam tushyanticha ramanticha. His devotees are enlightening each other by discussing about Krishna's pastimes. Arjuna acknowledges Krishna's supreme position, right? Param Brahma, Parandama, Pavitramidam Uttamam, right? Arjuna is telling that Arjuna, Krishna, you are telling who you are. In the past, great sages like Ashita, Devala, Narada, all of them said the same thing. Now I accept you, whatever you told me as truth. At Arjuna's request, Krishna describes the most prominent of his infinite opulences, the Vibhudis, which are just a spark of his splendor. By a single fragment of himself, Krishna pervades and supports this entire universe. So this is the summary of the 10th chapter. Now the Vishwarupa Yoga. So the 10th chapter is called Vibhuti Yoga and the 11th chapter is called Vishwarupa Yoga, right? Vishwarupa Darshana Yoga. Here, Krishna is going to, on the request of Arjuna, Krishna is going to show his universal form. Arjuna decided to see that all-pervading form of Krishna, and Krishna reveals his unlimitedly expansive universal form, Vishwarupa, by giving Arjuna the divine vision to behold it. And normally, a human being cannot see the universal form of Krishna. Krishna tells, it's not possible to see my all-pervading aspect. I give the divine vision through which you can see me, right? That's how, on the beginning, before showing the Vishwarupa, he gives that vision so that Arjuna can see that universal form. Witnessing that frightening display, Arjuna describes Krishna's supremacy and his form of time, Kalarupa, that devours everything. When he sees the Vishwarupa, Arjuna really become, very submissive. He starts offering prayer out of ecstasy by his hair standing on end, and he sees the Vishwarupa. He starts reciting, glorifying the supremacy of Krishna, right? Krishna then shows Arjuna the future outcomes of the war and asks him to be just an instrument in this mission. Arjuna offers prayers and apologizes Krishna for his offenses. At his request, Krishna again shows his original two-handed personal form. Pure bhakti is the prerequisite to see any form of Krishna and attain him. So this is the summary of the 11th chapter. And then in the 12th chapter, which is called Bhakti Yoga, Krishna says, a personalist devotee always worships Krishna and his path is easy and simple. In the beginning of 12th chapter, Arjuna asks, who is better? A person who worships the personal form of Krishna or the jnani who is trying to meditate on the impersonal Brahma Jyoti? Who is better? Krishna here very clearly says, a personalist devotee always worships Krishna and his path is easy and simple. The impersonal meditates on the unmanifest Brahman and his path is troublesome. Bhakti accommodates people at various levels. Ideally, one should fix one's ideally, one should fix one's mind and intelligence on Krishna always. But if that is not possible, one can practice to do so by sadhana bhakti. If that is also difficult, one can work for Krishna or at least give up the results of one's work for some good cause. A devotee possesses several glorious qualities like non-envy, equanimity, mercy, tolerance, and so on, that make him dear to Krishna. This is the summary of the 12th chapter. Thus, the middle 6 chapters glorify the path of Krishna Bhakti. In the first 6 chapters, Krishna explains the identity, Swarupa of the living entity. And the middle 6 chapters, he speaks of his own identity and the means to realize him. Now, the chapters 13 to 18, which constitutes the Jnana Yoga section of Bhagavad Gita. Which constitutes the Jnana Yoga section of the Bhagavad Gita. The last 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, 13 to 18. Jnana Yoga involves knowing the precise characteristics of the living entity, Jiva, the material nature, Prakriti, and the Supreme Lord, Ishvara. They are briefly described in the first 6 chapters and are elaborated in the last 6 chapters. Jnana assists us in developing detachment from matter and subsequent attachment to Krishna. When we understand how the material world is operating, how the 3 modes are binding, one can be careful so that he doesn't get entangled in the material nature. So when we develop detachment from the matter, automatically we will develop attachment to Krishna. In other words, when we develop attachment to Krishna, we will automatically develop detachment from matter. Thus, Jnana serves as the door to Bhakti, which is described in the middle section. Without the touch of Bhakti, both Karma and Jnana are useless. They cannot yield results. Both Karma and Jnana, they always require the support of Bhakti. Without devotion, the fruits, whatever we offer, there is not going to be any impact. Because when we offer something to the Supreme, there has to be some amount of devotion. Otherwise, one will not be able to execute one's the prescribed duties. Similarly, simply analytical study of matter and spirit will not yield taste for higher things, right? Some amount of devotion has to be there to get the result of both karma and jnana. In the 13th chapter, right, Krishna describes the material body is the field of activity Kshetra, and its knowers are the soul and Krishna, Kshetrajñas. There is one individual knower and the supreme knower, the local Jivatma and the universal Paramatma. Knowledge, Jnanam, consists of 20 elements, including humility, tolerance, and so on. The objects of knowledge, Jnayam, are the soul and the super soul. The living entity, Purusha, situated in the material nature, Prakriti, associates with the 3 modes and thinks himself the enjoyer and thus changes the body. The real Purusha or the enjoyer is the Supreme Lord. The Jiva is not the only doer of activities. By the vision of knowledge, Jnana Shakshu, one can see the Jiva, Prakriti, and the Lord properly. So this is the summary of the 13th chapter. In the 14th chapter, the Supreme Lord impregnates, Krishna explains how the Supreme Lord impregnates Prakriti with the Jivas. Therefore, Krishna is the father and Prakriti is the mother of all Jivas. The Jivas get conditioned by the material modes, gunas, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance. Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. The modes compete with each other for the prominence and influence the Jiva's action and destination. By unalloyed bhakti unto Lord Krishna, one can transcend the modes and become Gunatita. Gunatita means one who had raised above the 3 modes of material nature. In the 15th chapter, called Purushottama Yoga, Krishna describes how the material world is like an upside down banyan tree. One should cut down this material tree with the acts of detachment and surrender to Krishna and thus attain the spiritual world. The Jiva is a fragmental part of Krishna. Right? Krishna tells Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. This Jiva are my eternal part and parcel. Mamai Vamsi Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. The Jiva is a fragmental part of Krishna, but due to material mind and senses, the Jiva transmigrates from one body to another. Krishna is the maintainer of all. As Paramatma, he is the initiator of all activities. Right? Krishna, who is situated in the heart as Paramatma, he gives the inspiration based on our desires. When we see that we have certain desires, right? Krishna gives that intelligence to fulfill that desire, that intelligence to act to fulfill that desire, right? He is neutral, he is impartial. If you desire something, if you deserve, he will allow us to fulfill. If we do not deserve, then we have to earn. We should develop the ability to pay the price for it. Then that desire will become true. He is the initiator of all activities. He is above the fallible Kshara and infallible Akshara, living in it is, and is the super soul of all. Knowing Krishna means knowing everything. That is the conclusion of the 15th chapter, Purushottama Yoga. In the 16th chapter, the divine and demoniac nature, right? Daiva Ashura Sampada Yoga. Godly men are endowed with divine qualities, Daivi Sampata. Demoniac people have degraded qualities, Ashura Sampata. And activities that make them enter hell and lower species. Following scriptures causes elevation, disregarding them causes degradation. Right? When we follow the instruction of the scripture, our consciousness will get elevated because of the association with mode of goodness. When we disregard the instruction of the scripture, we will get contaminated with the mode of passion and ultimately lead to ignorance. That will cause the degradation of our consciousness. Arjuna inquires about the unauthorized worship of those who have some other faith, not based on scriptures. Krishna explains that the three modes determine people's faith, which can be known by the nature of their foods, sacrifices, austerities, and charity. Om Tat Sat indicates the supreme absolute truth, Vishnu. In the 17th chapter, right? Krishna explains about different types of faith. In the end of 16th chapter, Krishna tells, right, when somebody follows the scripture, his consciousness gets elevated. When disregards the scripture, his consciousness gets degraded. Then Arjuna asks the question, some people do worship, but disregarding the scripture, but they are worshipping. What is their position? What happens to them? Then Krishna talks about different types of faith based on mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance, right? And then that determines based on faith, which can be known by the nature of their foods, sacrifices, austerities, and charity. How do we know when somebody's mode of goodness? The choice of food they choose, the choice of austerities they want to perform, the choice of sacrifices they make, and the choice of charities they do. Based on all these things, one can determine one's mode, whether they are mode of passion, ignorance, or goodness, Sattva-guna, Rajoguna, and Tamo-guna. All these things can be understood by studying the 17th chapter. Finally, in the 18th chapter, right, summarizes Krishna all his teachings in the Gita. Krishna explains Tyaga or renunciation in 3 modes and 5 factors of action. He describes knowledge, work, worker, intelligence, determination, and happiness in the 3 modes, and purification through the prescribed duties of Varna Ashrama. Right? He talks about the duties of all the 4 Varnas, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, and then 4 ashramas also talks. He then describes Brahman platform, Brahma Bhuta Sanatanaha, right? He talks about how a living entity, right, situated in the Brahma Bhuta platform, right? This is confidential knowledge of the Vedas, right? Then he talks about surrender to super soul, the more confidential knowledge, and finally he talks about surrender to Lord Shri Krishna, the personal form of the Lord Bhagavan, the most confidential knowledge. Arjuna and Sanjaya present finally in the 18th chapter their realization. After hearing the full Gita, Arjuna speaks what he understood. After Arjuna finishes speaking, then Sanjaya tells to Dhritarashtra what he saw, the conversation, how he witnessed the conversation between Arjuna and Krishna, and how Krishna imparted the supreme knowledge. And then finally he gives his realization. That all comes in the 18th chapter. So this, as I said, this Bhagavad Gita, right, is the science of yoga. Every chapter of Bhagavad Gita is named as yoga, right? Every chapter is called, ends with the name yoga. So this yoga, as we saw that earlier, it's like a ladder system. Bhagavad Gita presents the path of yoga as a ladder with multiple rungs to reach the Supreme Lord Krishna. This yoga ladder that begins from the lowest material condition of the jiva and rises up to perfect realization in its pure spiritual life. Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport to the 6th verse, 6th chapter, 47th verse, right? The final verse of the 6th chapter, right? Yoginam api sarvesham matkandena atmanaka shraddhavan bhajate imam yoma like the yoga samaya yuga tamo mataka, right? That verse in that purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, yoga actually means bhakti yoga. All other yogas are progressions toward the destination of bhakti yoga. From the beginning of karma yoga to the end of bhakti yoga is a long way of self-realization. Karma yoga without fruitive results is the beginning of the path. When karma yoga increases in knowledge and renunciation, the stage is called jnana yoga. When jnana increases in meditation on the super soul by different physical processes and the mind is on him, it is called ashtanga yoga. And when one surpasses the ashtanga yoga, comes to the point of supreme personality of Godhead Krishna, it is called bhakti yoga, the culmination. Factually, bhakti yoga is the ultimate goal. But to analyze bhakti yoga minutely, one has to understand these other yogas. So this purport gives a nice insight on why Krishna speaks. If Bhakti Yoga is everything, if Bhakti Yoga is the conclusion, then why Krishna has to speak all the other yogas? Because in order to understand Bhakti Yoga properly, if you understand all the other paths, then we can see that all the other paths are nothing but culmination to ultimately to Bhakti Yoga. Every step in the ladder ultimately leads to the topmost platform. As we progress in the ladder, ultimately we'll come to the top most platform, that is Bhakti Yoga. Right? That's what here Prabhupada writes in the purport. Right here, I just put this, the diagram, right? The conditioned life, material life. From that, one elevates to Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura considers the following two verses spoken by Lord Krishna as the servants of Bhakti. Srila Prabhupada calls them the essence of Bhagavad Gita. In the 18th chapter, 65th verse, Krishna says, Man mana bhava mat bhakto mat yajimam namaskuru mam evaishasi satyam te pradijane priyosime. He is telling, always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this because you are my very dear friend. In the next verse, Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami masuchaha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. One second. Yeah. So these two verses are considered to be the concluding instruction of Krishna to Arjuna. And these two verses, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura says as the servants of Bhakti. This is the concluding instruction, concluding principle, the final instruction Krishna gives to Arjuna. Manmana bhava mat bhakto matyajmam namaskuru. Mam yeveshi satyamte pradijuna priyasme. Acharya has also considered this verse, 18.65, is considered to be the Gita Ragasya, the secret of Bhagavad Gita. And the next verse, 18.66, is considered to be the Charama Shloka or concluding verse. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. These two pure verses consisting of 64 syllables are like the jewels embedded on the lid. the last 6 chapters of the golden box of the Gita. So this is the overview of the chapters of Bhagavad Gita. Now we are going to see this overview in a flowchart format. The first 6 chapters, Karma Yoga, chapters 1 to 6, right? Here is the flow, right? In the first chapter, Arjuna observes the army and becomes overwhelmed by compassion for relatives, foreseeing no enjoyment in victory, fearful of sinful reaction and concerned about the harmful effects of destroying the families. Arjuna decides not to fight, right? The connection between the first chapter and the second chapter is Dhritarashtra becomes hopeful of not losing the kingdom for his sons. But Sanjaya describes how Krishna inspires Arjuna to fight. That leads to the second chapter. That is the summary of Gita. Arjuna accepts in the beginning of second chapter Krishna as Guru, and Krishna describes Jnana, knowledge of the body and soul, Sakama Karma, doing duty and attaining enjoyment, Buddhi Yoga, Nishkama Karma Yoga, working with the detachment and knowledge, and the qualities of Siddha Prajna. This is the second chapter. Connection, the link from the second chapter to third chapter is in 2.49. Krishna tells Arjuna to keep all abominable activities far away by Buddhi Yoga. So Arjuna asks, which of the two, renunciation and action, is better? That's what in the beginning of the third chapter, Arjuna asks the doubt. That leads to the second. That leads to the third chapter, Karma Yoga. Krishna prescribes action based on Nishkama Karma Yoga rather than premature renunciation based on Jnana Yoga. Even if Arjuna is qualified for renunciation, he should still do Nishkama Karma Yoga to set the right example. Lust is a formidable enemy on the path of yoga, and one has to conquer it by deliberate spiritual intelligence. The link to third to fourth chapter is Krishna presents transcendental knowledge by which one can be protected from the bondage of lust. The fourth chapter, transcendental knowledge descends from Krishna in disciplic succession. Knowing the divine nature of Lord Krishna's appearance gives liberation. Karma can be understood on the platform of jnana, and one can attain jnana through yajna, sacrifice, and from a bona fide guru. Tatvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadethim jnanam jnanina tattva darshanaga. Fourth chapter, 34th verse, Krishna gives how one should attain knowledge by approaching a bona fide spiritual master. So the link to the fifth chapter from the fourth chapter is Krishna spoke of attaining peace by jnana and renouncing karma by jnana in 4.41. But again asked Arjuna to take up karma yoga in 4.42. So Arjuna again asked about renunciation and action, sannyasa and karma yoga. Then Krishna clarifies in the karma sannyasa yoga in the fifth chapter, action and Krishna consciousness. Krishna says that they both are equal, but karma yoga is easier. Nishkama karma yoga frees one from bondage. One can attain liberation by focusing on the supreme. Ashtanga yoga and bhakti yoga give liberation. Having mentioned about Ashtanga yoga in brief in the end of fifth chapter, Krishna now describes in great detail in the sixth chapter about Dhyana yoga or Ashtanga yoga. Ashtanga yoga has two stages, Yoga Ruruksha beginning to Yoga Ruddha advanced. Ashtanga yoga has various practices and its perfection is to realize the super soul. In yoga, it is necessary to control the mind by practice and detachment. Even as unsuccessful yogi is given another opportunity to attain perfection. Bhakti yogi is the topmost yogi. This is the conclusion Krishna gives in the end of sixth chapter. In 6.47, that is the last verse, Krishna says, Bhakti is the highest form of yoga. From chapter 7, he is going to describe the Bhakti yoga elaborately. That is the link from the 6th chapter to 7th chapter. That is the middle section, Bhakti yoga, chapter 7 to chapter 12. In the 7th chapter, Jnana Vijnana yoga, knowledge of the absolute, Krishna reveals how hearing reveals knowledge about Krishna's material and spiritual energies. 4 types of people worship Krishna, right? And then 4 types of impious people don't. Some worship demigods, Some become impersonalists. One who is free from sin can do determined bhakti. In the 7th chapter, Krishna 29th and 30th verse, Krishna mentions about several items starting from Brahman. So then Arjuna in the beginning of 8th chapter asks several questions. What is Brahman? What is Adhyatma? What is Prakriti? What is Yagya? Who is Adi Yagya? All of them he asks various questions. To that, Krishna answers in the 8th chapter. Akshara Brahma Yoga. Who remembers Krishna at the time of death attains him. Jnanis and yogis attain liberation by path of light and karmi come back to this world. But a bhakta quits his material world full of miseries and attain Krishna's spiritual abode by pure bhakti. The link from the 8th chapter to 9th chapter is, having described the glory of Ananya Bhakti in the end of 8th chapter, Krishna now will describe how to become such an Ananya Bhakta, how to become a pure devotee. The most confidential knowledge is the knowledge of pure bhakti. Krishna creates, maintains, and destroys this world by his majestic powers. Fools and jnanis approach Krishna in different ways, but direct bhakti to Krishna is the best. Krishna is specifically inclined to a devotee and forgives him for accidental mistakes. In 9.34, Krishna instructed him to fix one's mind on him. In chapter 10, Krishna describes his opulences on which one can fix his mind and remember him. The opulences of Krishna in the 10th chapter are unlimited, Krishna describes. He is the origin of everything and is especially merciful to his devotees. Arjuna accepts Krishna's supreme position, and at his request, Krishna describes all his opulences, vibhudis, which are just a spark of his splendor. He is all-pervading super soul and everything in the cosmos. So in 10.42, Krishna said that he pervades and supports the entire universe. In 11.1 to 4, Arjuna desires to see that all-pervasive universal form. That leads to the 11th chapter, Vishwarupa Yoga. Universal form, Vishwarupa of Krishna, consists of everything within the universe. Frightened upon seeing the form of time, Kala Rupa, that devoured everything, Arjuna offered prayers and requested Krishna to manifest his pleasing two-handed form. In 11.55, Krishna established the supremacy of Bhakti Yoga and took his personal form. So in 12.1, Arjuna inquires about personalists and impersonalists. In the 12th chapter, Krishna says devotional service is the highest of all spiritual paths. Krishna differentiates between the personalists and impersonalists and gives the progressive levels of bhakti that enable people at various stages to connect with the Supreme. A devotee possess several glorious qualities that enter him to Krishna, that makes very dear him to Krishna. Having described the Bhakti Yoga in 6 chapters, Krishna describes the Jnana Yoga in the last 6 chapters. That leads to the 13th to 18th chapter flow. Knowledge of, this is again, I put the wrong diagram here. The last 6 chapters, I just cut and pasted the same. Sorry about that. Let me get the image of the last. The last 6 chapters flow. Sorry, I wrongly pasted the same thing again in this flow as well. Just 1 second. I'm going to just bring that image from the other computer. So. So this is the final chapter. So in the 13th chapter, Krishna talks about nature, the enjoyer, and consciousness. Upon Arjuna's inquiry, Krishna explains the 6 topics: Kshetra, the field of activities, or body. Second, Kshetra Jnam, knower of the body, the soul, and Krishna, the super soul. Jnanam, the 20 elements of knowledge. Jnayam, the objects of knowledge, soul and super soul. Prakriti, the material nature. Purusha, Jiva, and the Lord. A true seer has the right vision of Jiva, Prakriti, and Paramatma. In the 13.22, Krishna said about the Jiva takes up repeated birth and death due to association with the material modes. In chapter 14, Krishna will explain how the mode bind the Jiva on the way out, how to come out of these 3 modes, the modes of material nature. The Supreme Lord impregnates the Jivas into the womb of Prakriti that consists of 3 material modes, right? There is competition among the 3 modes, and one of them becomes prominent and influences the Jiva's action and destinations. By pure bhakti, one can transcend all the 3 modes. In 14.26, Krishna said that one can transcend the modes by bhakti, but attachment to Krishna needs developing detachment to this world. In chapter 15, Krishna describes the process of detachment, the yoga of the Supreme Person, right? Purushottama Yoga. The material world, 15th chapter, is like an upside down banyan tree. One should cut it with the axe of detachment and surrender to Krishna. Due to material mind and senses, the Jiva, although a fragmental part of Krishna transmigrates. Krishna is the maintainer of all and is above the fallible Kshara and infallible Akshara living entities and is the super soul. In the 15th chapter, Krishna described banyan tree of material world, but its fruits are not described. In the 16th chapter, Krishna describes the good fruits, divine qualities, and bad fruits, demoniac qualities. Right? The divine and demoniac natures. Godly men are endowed with 26 divine qualities, Daivi Sampada. The demoniac people have degraded qualities, Asura Sampada, and their activities make them enter hell and lower species. Following the scriptures causes elevation, and disregarding them causes degradation. In 1623, Krishna said, those who disregard scriptures and behave whimsically do not attain happiness in this life or next. In 17.1, Arjuna asked Krishna about the unauthorized worship of those who have some faith not based on scriptures. Krishna talks about the divisions of faith, Shraddha Dhyana Yoga, right? Here Krishna says, Krishna explains that the 3 modes determine people's faith, which can we know about the nature by the nature of their foods, sacrifices, austerities, and charity. Om Tat Sat indicates supreme absolute truth, Vishnu. In the previous chapters, various systems of yoga and the supremacy of Bhakti Yoga have been explained. In the last chapter, Krishna gives an overview of the Bhagavad Gita. Basically, it does a recap of Bhagavad Gita and stresses that surrender unto Krishna in Bhakti is the ultimate goal of life. The 18th chapter, which is the conclusion, the perfection of renunciation, right? Krishna explains Tyaga in the 3 modes, 5 factors of action, knowledge, worker, intelligence, determination, and happiness in 3 modes, and purification through prescribed duties of the Varnashrama. Then Krishna describes Brahman platform, surrender to super soul and to Krishna. So this is the overview of Bhagavad Gita with the flow, the connection between the chapters. So this kind of gives a view of the bird's eye view of the 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita. So in today's session, what we saw is why to study Bhagavad Gita systematically. We saw that preparing the mood for Gita study and the Gita jewel box, how the first 6 chapters are the base portion of the jewel box, the last 6 chapters are the lid of the jewel box, and the middle 6 chapters are the valuable jewel inside the jewel box. And then we saw the structure, right? The Karma Yoga section, the Jnana Bhakti Yoga section, and Jnana Yoga section, and the Yoga ladder we saw, and the flow of Bhagavad Gita, the chapter to chapter link with the link. We saw how the chapters of Gita flow, the bird's eye view of Bhagavad Gita, part 1, part 2, part 3, the three charts we saw. So that concludes our session today. Any comments, questions? So there's a message from Prashant Ji that it will be helpful if you can read Bhagavad Gita as is, if you can post today's presentation. Yes, definitely. We will post today's presentation as well. And then from next week, we are going to read directly from Bhagavad Gita as it is. Verse by verse sloka, we will recite the Sanskrit sloka, and then the word by word meaning, and then the translation and the commentary. Now, given that we got enough of background of what Gita is about, we got good 12 sessions of thematic study, the introduction to Gita we saw. And then the next 2 sessions, we saw the preface and setting the scene, and as well as the introduction from Bhagavad Gita as it is. And today's session, we saw the structure of Bhagavad Gita, how the Bhagavad Gita is structured in this 3 yogas, Karma Yoga section, Jnana Yoga section, Bhakti Yoga section. And we saw the summary of each chapter, and then we saw the connection between each chapter, the flow of Bhagavad Gita. The 18 chapters we saw today. So next week, now we are going to jump into verse by verse, chapter by chapter, detailed study from Bhagavad Gita as it is. Any comments? Any questions? Any clarifications?
Just please post the PDF version at your convenience, Swamiji.
Yeah. Today I will post.
Thank you.
Okay. So if not, then we'll come to conclusion of today's session. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. We will meet again next week, starting with the first chapter. The section by section of the first chapter we are going to read next week. Hare Krishna.